Hello and welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining today for the November edition of ECGrid Presents. This is a monthly webinar series where B2B industry experts share insights on various topics of interest to the supply chain community. I'm your host, Linda Moore, and it's an honor to introduce you to today's presenter, an EDI and supply chain expert and frequent conference speaker, someone many people consider to be an EDI guru. He's currently Chief Strategy Officer here at Lauren Data ECGrid, Mr. Tony D'Angelo. Today, Tony will help us discover how AI agents are currently transforming traditional supply chain management, including EDI, from a reactive process into a more predictive, proactive system. If you have any questions during the session, go ahead and type them right in the Q&A at the bottom of your Zoom screen anytime during the presentation. As usual, you'll all receive the on-demand recording of this session by email. And now, without further ado, let's get started. Welcome, Tony.
Thank you very much, Linda. I appreciate it. And good morning, good afternoon, depending on where everyone is. So today we're going to be talking about AI agents using in predictive mode instead of reactive mode. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so we want to understand the transformation of the supply chain, okay, and cover the reactive to proactive with the integration, and of course with EDI and API for intelligent alerting. We're going to show some key benefits. We're going to talk about some implementation steps, best use cases, and some real-time examples. Okay, but first, we keep hearing that AI is taking over the world. It's so smart. It's so scary. Well, it's getting better. But I gave a presentation last year, and of course I prompted AI and said, show me salmon in the river, and this is what it came back with. It came back with pieces of salmon in the river. So I didn't think it was that smart. But this year at the same conference, and a year later, I said, here's the AI prompt was make Tony a country music star. This is what it came back with. That's right. That's me. After seeing this, I went out and I actually bought that jacket. But it shows AI is getting much better. All right, let's talk about reactive to proactive. Okay, so the shift, some of the key differences between the traditional, and the AI-driven supply chains. Real world examples. We're gonna be discussing this in depth. That's what most of the presentation is about. All right. So here's some key differences between traditional and AI-driven supply chains. Okay, supply chain management has long been a reactive domain. Okay, we respond to disruptions like delays, stockouts, supplier issues, only after they occur. But AI agents are revolutionizing this landscape. They introduce, proactive and, more importantly, predictive, capabilities. Right. So there's some of the new buzzwords that are out there. Like agentic AI, and think of agentic meaning agent. Predictive capabilities using large language models, LLMs. You might have seen that buzzword, and also machine learning. Generative AI, that's where artificial intelligence actually generates product. It generates content for you. And, and the predictive AI is like you think. It's predictive, meaning it's going to predict and forecast things in the future. Okay, but, some of these aspects like disruption responses, data utilization, alerting mechanisms, and so on, they are changing from having to react to an issue to now predict and sometimes give you the answer before any issue happens. In vendor relations, we've had siloed communications, delayed negotiations, but with the proactive approach, we've got collaborative platforms, sharing forecasting, and having dynamic pricing proposals, and so on. So I'm not really going to read this whole slide. You can read faster than I can talk. But really, the bottom line effect is reactive costs are usually 10 to 20% higher. Okay. And, when we're looking for reductions, those reductions are usually in those disruptions in our industry. Okay. Per these benchmarks. So let's go through some real world examples of AI agents. Okay. So this transformation is really, it's evident in existing tools. I mean, when I was doing research for this presentation, I found, Cognitive Solution by Blue Yonder, where AI agents detect anomalies, right, in shipment data, and they suggest fixes, integrating EDI and APIs for flexibility. And there are other providers that have supply chain agents that interpret natural language queries. Um, Example, assess the supplier risk from a geopolitical tension. As across the world, there's a lot of politics that are going back and forth, especially with some of the disruptions we've had over the past actually couple of years. Okay, but it delivers optimized recommendations and advanced solutions. So let's go next over to the EDI and API infrastructure and talk about intelligent alerting. Okay, this is how EDI and API would empower AI agents for proactive alerting, integrations, detection, of certain patterns, and also real-time data access and migrations. Okay. Organizations are already exchanging data with partners with EDI. Everyone knows that, right? The standardized documents like purchase orders, invoices, ASNs, and they're also using APIs for dynamic real-time queries. Okay. But these are really ideally positioned, okay, to deploy AI agents. And an AI agent, if you want to think of it in its most basic form, it's a small piece of coding that was created either by humans or by other AI agents that do small autonomous pieces of work. And when you have AI agents that are collaborating with each other, okay, they're exchanging data to find more complicated solutions. Okay, let's think of it that way. Okay, but integrations, let's say for cold chain logistics. Okay, AI would monitor the EDI shipping manifests and the Internet of Things, IoT. It's another buzzword. Okay, there are temperature gauges that interact over the internet that monitor the temperature. Okay, to prevent spoilage. Okay, so some of these AI agents are very important, and when they're working, in a networked ecosystem, okay, like some of the companies that are working with ECGrid and ECGrid itself, which is Lauren Data ECGrid, we offer scalable AI enhanced cloud EDI solutions for those supply chains. All right, let's talk about some of the API enhancements and real-time data access and autonomous migrations. So APIs enable the bidirectional communications, low latency, letting agents really pull live data from different kinds of systems like ERP systems, transportation management systems, TMSs, CRM platforms, and so on. When I was doing research, I actually found one of them that's using an AI agent, for example, to connect to, using APIs to carrier systems for proactive freight forwarding. Okay, and that reduces errors, across the board, across in the supply chain. And when we're talking about mitigating disruption, unified EDI and API platforms, okay, especially when married up with AI, okay, they allow autonomous simulation of disruptions. Okay, and now we're throwing all the big words in there. The orchestration of mitigation strategies. What does that really mean? It's going down through and it's simulating things that could happen in a predictive way. That's part of the predictive AI. So these agents are going around and they're saying, this might happen, maybe because of weather patterns, maybe because of political tensions, maybe because of different closures at either airports or on roads and so on. And it's looking for ways to mitigate those. All right, let's talk about some of the key benefits, enhancing B2B connectivity using, with vendor relations and resilience. Right. First key benefit. So enhanced B2B connectivity by bridging EDI's infrastructure, okay, with API's speed. These agents will enable self-service onboarding, seamless data flows, and and just data exchange, queries, setups, and monitoring. For instance, some AI agents within some of these networks, they automate routine data exchange across global partners, and they reduce the setup time, for those trading partners, from weeks to sometimes hours or even minutes. Okay, and this creates intelligent networks. Okay, and these intelligent networks where partners share predictive insights, for example, joint demand forecasts. So where should products be across the supply chain, because of different things. And I mentioned already, it could be weather related, it could be, just consumer demand, where you want products in the Northeast instead of the Southwest. Okay, so a lot of the AI agents that are out there and the predictive and married up with generative AI, they're using those technologies to now deploy better, better resources across the supply chain so that we can make better decisions. Right. Let's talk the second, optimizing vendor relations. Let's say with dynamic scoring, collaboration. Okay, some AI agents are already scoring vendors based on performance metrics. For example, on-time delivery, EDI data being compliant, and they can negotiate dynamically. So sometimes the AI agents are now, and this is happening today, they're negotiating pricing, they're negotiating terms and other metrics that are set against KPIs. So some providers, generative AI agents, they update master data sets, continuously, enabling personalized vendor scoring, collaborative planning that cuts negotiation cycles by 20 to 30%. Okay. In practice, this means that alerting a vendor to potential raw material shortages before they happen, that builds trust, builds loyalty across the trading partnership and across the supply chain. So third, let's talk about building resilience and protecting the bottom line with agentic AI. Okay, so agentic AI, it simulates scenarios using proprietary data, okay, for things that aren't supposed to be happening, shocks like natural disasters, and other things that could be happening, whether it's man-made or just happening, from naturally. So some of the folks that we've been researching, like IBM, they have task agents that test what if hypotheses, and they just reroute shipments to avoid data problems, that could result in $1 million losses. We know that Amazon Web Services, AWS, they have logistics agents that handle natural language interactions for updates, recommendations. They turn scattered data into really, operational data. And overall, adopters of this technology report a 15 to 25% lower disruption costs. And also, there's reduction in inventory, which everyone knows is cost savings across the board. Okay, and fourth, let's measure success and achieve agent autonomy. Okay, now AI agents, as autonomous as we want to make them, still need guardrails. They still need, governance so that they behave properly. Okay, but in practical use today, okay, we can measure, we can track KPIs like using AI, like a alert resolution time. Okay, from the first case through the resolution, disruption frequency, and also we want to make sure that the agent autonomy, okay, in 50% of the workflows is within 6 to 12 months. And as the supply chains face escalating volatility from climate events, trade shifts, the AI agents are amplified by the ISVs and the EDI ecosystems, like Lauren Data's ECGrid, right? With its reselling partners, especially. They represent not just efficiency gains, but strategic imperative. Okay. By turning this data into foresight, okay, we're also empowering organizations to really go around disruptions, okay, and become opportunities for service providers, rather than threats to the supply chain. So, choosing the right provider, the right supply chain provider, okay, is key in this. All right, let's talk about some best use cases for agentic AI. And remember, agentic means the AI agents, okay, those tiny pieces of work that predict and prevent supply chain disruptions, okay? So demand forecasting, that's key, right? And inventory optimization, okay? So AI agents can continuously analyze historical sales data, market trends, social media sentiment. Okay, I know we don't really like that because that's with the consumer, but social media when it's related to companies and brands, okay, weather patterns, economic indicators, and now even political landscapes to generate accurate demand forecasts. They autonomously adjust. Okay, they can adjust the inventory levels across warehouses. They can adjust with suppliers to prevent stockouts, and also they can adjust manufacturing production lines and retail fulfillment. Okay, for instance, Walmart, real world example, right? Retailers like Walmart would use these agents to predict local demand fluctuations because of events, because of weather. A lot of the Walmart stores and warehouses are down in the south where sometimes they're being hit by hurricanes. These can be seen by these AI agents that are monitoring, let's say, the weather patterns. Okay. And also they can optimize stock to avoid shortages in these affected areas. So in manufacturing, a consumer electronics company, for instance, reduced inventory carrying costs by 34% and stockouts by 76%. That's key, right? Through real-time demand sensing and dynamic adjustments. Right, let's talk about now autonomous procurement, supplier management. Okay, this is related to monitoring supplier performance, price fluctuations, and external risks. Like factory shutdowns, trade issues, and so on. Upon detecting these disruptions, okay, the AI agents can evaluate alternatives. All right, let's talk about some of these. Okay, risk monitoring, real-time risk monitoring. Okay, they can continuously track the supplier performance and external risks for these disruptions. Okay, and for manufacturers, this ensures that the raw materials, okay, are available during events like everyone knows COVID-19, but the factory closures that have been happening, around the world, where let's say pharmaceutical companies have shifted production to either Europe or India to avoid shortages. Okay, and some of the retailers benefit from this by maintaining their product sourcing continuity. Okay, so overall, AI agents predict risks through supplier intelligence to prevent delays with proactive sourcing and the agents learning from past data. Okay, and that's really where the predictive and generative AI come in. They learn from past data to improve reliability across the board. All right, let's talk about logistics and route optimizations. That's another great use case. Okay, so using GPS data, traffic data, weather forecasts, port congestion reports. Okay, agentic AI dynamically reroutes shipments. It reassigns loads. It synchronizes with warehouses to prevent some of these delays. So this is critical to retailers facing, let's say, last mile delivery issues. Manufacturers that rely on timely components, to build the rest of their products. And in fact, in this use case, a European logistics provider, they reduced delivery delays by 30% and the fuel use by 12. Okay, by using proactive route management. Okay, but the predictions, they're not done in a vacuum. These come from real-time scenario simulations. Okay, whether it's AI doing it or with human intervention, AI and humans to prevent these occurrences from happening. All right, let's talk about some EDI-enabled demand forecasting, inventory optimization. Okay, so these agentic AI agents, right? They continuously analyze historical sales data, and looking for many indicators across the board, okay, to ensure accurate demand forecasts. Real-time data integration is key, okay, with EDI. Okay, the EDI provides real-time structured transactions for going through and looking at early detection of demand fluctuations. So when you have AI looking through your EDI data, okay, especially your real-time EDI data, it's very fast, it's very accurate. It's as accurate as you let it learn, because AI is, it's always in learning mode. So it's learning on history and it's learning on the predictive. Okay, so and then analyzing the actual results. Okay, inventory optimization. The agents they're always adjusting inventory to prevent stockouts, as one of our other slides said. And also overstocks. Okay, so that we don't have the wrong product in the wrong places. Okay, but the business impact is very high, as you see here. Reducing stockouts by 76%. That's amazing. All right, and that's due to some of these new technologies. All right, let's talk about some tools that agentic AI brings to bear for some of these supply chains. So, modern B2B network management platforms, they use agentic AI to simplify, let's say, partner onboarding, to monitor transactions in real time, automate, error resolution, look and also reduce the manual, interventions that some of the either support folks or development folks, or even executives, it's really lowering the costs across the board. So in these predictive contexts, right, these agents can flag disruptions. Okay, supplier delays, inventory anomalies, right? Using event-driven alerts. The alerting that comes out of AI is one of the most important things that we're seeing today, okay, as a result of adopting these technologies. Okay, and it's whether it's integrated to an ERP system, an WMS system, an IoT, the Internet of Things, monitors. Okay, across the board, it's helping companies everywhere. Right. So some of the case studies that highlight some of these benefits, like 50% faster integration time, in the supply chain between a buyer and a seller, or a seller and their carriers. Okay. AI can predict equipment failures. They can analyze EDI data streams. They can monitor sensor inputs. And let's say for retailers, it also supports dynamic inventory adjustments. So, during demand spikes, and it also ensures compliance with EDI standards, like ANSI X12, EDIFACT, and even using some of the newer technologies with APIs and handling JSON data feeds. But it's all leveraging AI for anomaly detection. That's the key. All right, let's go over some examples that we actually have, that real life examples in the field. So, an ECGrid partner, for example, we have an ISV, a service provider, that is utilizing AI to parse an actual retailer implementation guide and map that guide into their systems. Okay, and what used to be 3 or 4 hours of work became 5 minutes. Okay, with 85 to 90% accuracy. Okay, and of course the AI systems learn, so as they are using it more and more, the accuracy is going to go even higher. In a prior presentation that I gave, okay, we actually pulled up a retailer's implementation guide for a purchase order, and real time, I send it through ChatGPT and said, based on this implementation guide, please produce a compliant purchase order in X12 format. And it actually did. It got very, very close. It wasn't 100%, but it got very close. This goes a step much further, okay, with the technology. So just in the span of a year, it's gotten incredibly powerful. EDI van, our Lauren Data ECGrid van, who many of you are familiar with. We use AI to detect anomalous communications okay, traffic, anomalous traffic, or errors within routing, okay, meaning, routing over to either other interconnected tier one networks, but it looks through traffic. It can detect loops, spikes, and so on, and we're only just making it better and better, as time goes on. Another use case right from the field, transformation. Okay, Lauren Data, our simplified service. We use AI for custom complex C# programming. Okay, and if you don't know anything about Simplify, we do have a it's a subsystem within the technology. Okay, where you can extend the mapping programming, the data augmentation, the substitution, cross-reference tables, calculations, and in other places. Okay, we use AI for a lot of that. And another one is live example. We have a partner doing ISV integration with ECGrid OS. That's our API suite, of course. But we actually assisted and we created 8 new AI agents in the partner's AI marketplace for listing data exchanged, queries on the trading partner routings, and listing details, in their van mailbox. So AI is becoming, a part of our daily life as well. So we're really excited about this. Right, let's talk about the role of service providers and iPaaS, its infrastructure platform as a service in the AI-driven supply chains. It's a big slide, a lot of data, right? But really, okay, so iPaaS, the iPaaS industry, right? They play a pivotal role in scaling these AI agents for the supply chain transformation, right? Providing cloud-based platforms to integrate the disparate systems. And many of them are embedding AI for proactive intelligence, okay, instead of reactive. Boomi, for example, they stand out as the leader in agentic AI, and they have a tool, within their marketplace for full lifecycle management of AI agents. Very important, that governance. Give everyone a second to read through that. Okay, so let's go now. We're almost finished. Here's the conclusion. AI agents in the supply chain. Okay, they enhance the supply chain management by enabling predictive and data-driven decision-making. Integration technologies, EDI, APIs, integration platforms, and also, the smallest of small, the Internet of Things, those little monitors that we're talking about, integrating into the global supply chain. Extremely important. It's happening now. And the future supply chain benefits, okay? As AI gets smarter and smarter and the agents become more pervasive in our daily life, okay, it's only going to get better. The adoption, is key to companies using it. And in short, we don't need to think of AI as scary anymore. The future's now. As long as the governance is there, we believe it'll continue to improve our lives. So now we'll go over to the Q&A session. I'll pass it back over to Linda.
Hey, thanks, Tony. We do have a couple of questions already, but I invite everyone on the call to drop their questions right in the Q&A icon at the bottom of your Zoom screen. The first question we have here is, how will the role of a traditional supply chain planner or EDI specialist change once AI agents take over much of the reactive work?
Wow. So it's a great question. So
Yeah.
when I was an EDI specialist, I would have run for the hills. No, I'm kidding. It's going to change. Okay, it will change, but I think it'll be changing for the better. Okay, so let's talk about the EDI specialist first. I think their roles will change from doing mapping and building and maintaining maps. And being more of a transactional, type of role into being, well, I use the word governance. Let's say data governance experts. Okay, they'll focus on managing the integration between, across the supply chain, and not just EDI, but also to the to AI, to different integration platforms, whether it's a ERP, WMS, TMS, or whatever, but ensuring the data quality, across the supply chain that they're involved with, meaning their trading partners and so on. But you mentioned supply chain planners. Um,
Yes.
yeah, it's going from reactive to reactive to proactive. They're gonna be involved more with strategic decision making, I think. So,
Mhm.
and they'll use AI to assist them in that.
Sounds good. Thank you. Here's another question. So some data that's sent via EDI is considered to be confidential or sensitive. So how's the security and the data privacy concerns addressed when these AI agents exchange real-time sensitive data between businesses?
Yeah. Well, I'm gonna bring up data governance again, because that's really important. If the AI agents are not monitored, for good and bad behavior, there's going to be issues. But I feel that the companies that are coming up with the data governance platforms are going to be very important. Um, you know, we look at regulations like GDPR, like CCPA in the United States, mostly California and other states. The data is really containerized, if you will, okay, in private clouds. So by definition, they're more secure. But encryption, authentication, I mean, the data exchange is using multi-factor authentication, role-based access, and so on. So I mean, I think a lot of the current security models um, can be applied over AI. But they need to actually happen. We can't let AI create their own because we do have AI creating other AI agents now. But if there's no governance in there, it's going to be an issue. There's another thing like data. We all want our data to be anonymous as consumers, right? So remember, you're the product when something's free. So being able to mask your data or make it anonymous, that's going to be key, especially because AI can so quickly dig that data out of different LLMs. So
All right. Last question here, Tony. What are some of the most common patterns that an AI agent flags as potential disruption risks?
wow, these are great questions.
Mhm.
We have a good team here. Yeah, yeah. So AI agents, they look for mostly anomalies, right? Look for time-based anomalies. So, where lead times could be affected. When you're talking about a buyer and a seller, or a seller and their carriers and so on. They can look through ASNs, and look for compliance on ASNs inbound, let's say, where, there are certain data fields that are required by one retailer, not required by another. They can flag something in the future, let's say about our, global product access service that has just recently launched. The as we're profiling, each retailer for buyers to put the data onto global catalog. We can go down through and see if there's compliance for one retailer and not compliance with another retailer, for instance. So there's also compliance deviations, right? So if there's issues with integrity, data integrity, I'm talking about, right? Data integrity or spikes, valleys, in compliance, it can proactively give you those answers before they become a problem. And that's really the whole crux of the entire presentation here. You want it to predict. Okay, you want AI agents to predict things, okay, to prevent these supply chain disruptions from even happening. And when that happens, everyone's going to be a lot happier, of course, but then you start getting really big efficiencies. That's what I feel.
Great. Let me see. There may be another question. All right, there is another question here. Our organization already has a mature EDI environment handling complex B2B integrations. We're interested in exploring how AI could start adding value, whether that's through data validation, exception handling, predictive analytics, or automation. In your experience, what's the best first step for a business like ours to begin incorporating AI into our EDI operations?
Yeah, that's That's the biggest question. How do you start? How do you start using AI? So validations, looking at predicting things that are happening and also answering questions very quickly. Dirty data. You want data quality to be up there, and mostly we're talking about master data, right? When you're talking about the supply chain. So when data is being exchanged, these AI agents can really look over some of these data exchanges and also compliance issues more quickly than having them do the more complex activities. But there's a lot of information that's out there right now, and there are many different AI models to choose from. I would select from basically as many as I could to start getting some of these answers and start getting a way forward, to program in some of this AI. Remember, it started out as scary. Okay, and everyone's like, which kind of AI should I use? Gen AI, predictive AI agents? Should I be creating my own large language model? And what about machine learning? So many buzzwords, and they all happened very, very quickly, like within the last, 18 to 24 months that we've been hearing about it. And now it's in action. My advice is start out slowly with agents or predictive AI that can assist, in your models and can assist either your customers or your trading partners or your company itself.
That's great advice. We do have a follow-up question. How does this advance us from the standard alerting that we already have in place, for example, for some missing data or bad messages within our EDI documents?
Well, number one, especially AI agents themselves, right? So agents can more quickly monitor this activity. And look, we've been creating like mini programs for decades, that can look through and check for compliance, check for bad data, and do things like that. Well, those little snippets of code are now becoming agents that are running constantly instead of running, by being executed. So that's really the biggest difference between what we used to do programming wise and what the newer technologies, using agents is doing, right? Back when I was a computer science student, we wrote programs that look for bad things, that look for dirty data or look for some of these anomalies. Well, those need to be executed, and they need to be executed either real time or they need to be executed on a trigger. With AI agents, they are constantly monitoring, meaning they're always running. So that's really the difference. It's more real time than what we used to call real time, and because of that, they're able to predict because they're learning, right? Because they're always storing new data, right? They're learning to look at it and predict it a little bit better.
Well, thank you so much, Tony, for being with us today, for sharing your vision on some of the changes that we'll be seeing in EDI and supply chain, thanks to AI agents. And to everyone on the call, we appreciate you being with us today. We will be back in January with new monthly installments of ECGrid Presents. Until then, be well, continued success to you all, and look forward to seeing you again.